Episode 12. But Uncle Vernon wasn't going to give in without a fight.
"Haven't I told you he's not going?" he hissed. "He's going to Stonewall High, and he'll be grateful for it. I've read those letters, and he needs all sorts of rubbish, spell books and wands, and if he wants to go, a great muggle like you won't stop him," growled Hagrid. "Stop Lily and James Potter's son going to Hogwarts. You're mad. His name's been down ever since he was born. He's off to the finest school of witchcraft and wizardry in the world. 7 years there and he won't know himself. He'll be with youngsters of his own sort for a change, and he'll be under the greatest headmaster Hogwarts ever had, Albus Dumbledore." "I'm not paying for some crackpot old fool to teach him magic tricks," yelled Uncle Vernon.
But he had finally gone too far. Hagrid seized his umbrella and whirled it over his head.
"Never," he thundered, "insult Albus Dumbledore in front of me."
He brought the umbrella swishing down through the air to point at Dudley. There was a flash of violet light, a sound like a firecracker, a sharp squeal, and the next second Dudley was dancing on the spot with his hands clasped over his fat bottom, howling in pain. When he turned his back on them, Harry saw a curly pig's tail poking through a hole in his trousers. Uncle Vernon roared. Pulling Aunt Petunia and Dudley into the other room, he cast one last terrified look at Hagrid and slammed the door behind them. Hagrid looked down at his umbrella and stroked his beard. "Shouldn't have lost me temper," he said ruefully. "But it didn't work anyway. Meant to turn him into a pig, but I suppose he was so much like a pig anyway there wasn't much left to do." He cast a sideways look at Harry under his bushy eyebrows. "Be grateful if you didn't mention that to anyone at Hogwarts," he said. "I'm not supposed to do magic, strictly speaking. I was allowed to do a bit to follow you and get you your letters and your stuff. It's one of the reasons I was so keen to take on the job." "Why aren't you supposed to do magic?" asked Harry.
"Oh, well, I was at Hogwarts myself, but I got expelled, to tell you the truth, in me 3rd year. They snapped me wand in half and everything. But Dumbledore let me stay on as gamekeeper. Great man, Dumbledore."
"Why were you expelled?"
"Well, it's getting late and we've got lots to do tomorrow," said Hagrid loudly. "Gotta get up to town, get all your books and all that." He took off his thick black coat and threw it to Harry. "You can kip under that," he said. "Don't mind if it wriggles a bit. I think I still got a couple of dormice in one of the pockets."
Chapter 5. Diagon Alley. Harry woke up early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes tight shut. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. "I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard." There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, 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 tap. "All right," Harry mumbled, "I'm getting up." He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight. The storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. "Don't do that!" Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. "Hagrid," said Harry loudly, "there's an owl!"
"Pay him,"
Hagrid grunted into the sofa. "What?"
"He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets."
Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins.
"Give him 5 canutes,"
said Hagrid sleepily. "Canutes?"
"The little bronze ones."
Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money in a small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly, sat up and stretched.
Missed me off, Harry. Lots to do today. Got to get up to London and buy all your stuff for school."
Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had got a puncture. Hagrid?" said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. "I haven't got any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic."
"Don't worry about that," said
Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head.
"You think your parents didn't leave you anything?"
"But if their house was destroyed—"
"They didn't keep their gold in the house, boy."
"Nah. First stop for us is Gringotts, Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold. And I wouldn't say no to a bit of your birthday cake neither." "Wizards have banks?"
"Just the one. Gringotts. Run by goblins."
Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. "Goblins?"
"Yeah, and you'd be mad to try and rob it, I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyway, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business." He drew himself up proudly. "It usually gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting things from Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on, then."
Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. "How did you get here?" Harry asked, looking around for another boat.
"Flew,"
said Hagrid. "Flew?"
"Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now I've got you."
They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying.
"Seems a shame to row, though," said Hagrid,
still giving Harry another of his sideways looks.
"If I was to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hogwarts?"
"Of course not," said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out the pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off toward land. "Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts?" Harry asked.
"Spells. Enchantments," said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. "They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults, and then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see, deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on something."
Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, the Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but It was very difficult. He'd never had so many questions in his life.
Ministry of Magic messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page.
There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked before he could stop himself.
Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler if there ever was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice.
But what does the Ministry of Magic do?
Well, their main job is to keep it from the muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country.
Why?
Why? Blimey, Harry, everybody'd be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone.
At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbour wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper, and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street.